Our topic is child labor laws, and child labor laws is to protect the education opportunities of kids and to stop their employment in jobs that are harmful to their health and safety. Our first argument on why child labor laws is important is because children don't have the choice. Their families need them to work for the more income, and companies are taking advantage of that and making kids do the hard work that they wouldn't want to do. Our second argument is I believe child labor laws is more important than working conditions because children are not only working in bad conditions, they're also doing hard, dangerous work for long periods of time that can affect their health in the long run. Our third argument are these kids are so young and they still have a life ahead of them, and the working conditions that they're going through are going to affect their mental health for the rest of their life in ways that they're going to have anxiety, PTSD, going through life because of these working conditions, and they're going to have to learn how to go through that and cope with that.
Here are some events that involved child labor in the early 1900s.
In 1902, Florence Kelley helped form the National Child Committee. Florence Kelley was a lawyer who helped convince the state of Illinois to ban child labor. Progressives persuaded some states to pass laws limiting the workday to 10 hours, but in 1905, the Supreme Court ruled that such laws were unconstitutional. In 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York killed 146 workers, most of them being Jewish women. The women had little chance to escape due to the managers locking the exits. In 1912, the National Child Labor Committee successfully lobbied the federal government to create the U.S. Children's Bureau. The agency examined any issue that affected the health and welfare of children. In 1916, Congress passed the Keating-Owens Act, which banned child labor. 2 years later, the Supreme Court ruled that law unconstitutional. It wasn't until 1938 that Congress ended child labor for good.
So what caused child labor to go from kids being apprentices to now kids getting their fingers chopped off in factories? This was mainly caused by the Industrial Revolution, which started around the 1700s, but it wasn't until the late 1800s when lots of jobs were being created by these factories, and the demand for work was really high. And remember, these factories were brand new, so they didn't have any work regulations set in place. And at the time, the cheapest workers that you could get were 10 to 15-year-old immigrants who would work long hours and sometimes maybe even all day just to get paid 10 cents, which is the same amount as getting paid $2.
Some perspectives of people who support child labor argue that families who lack financially would be more poor without the supplemental financial contribution of children. Another reason they believe this is that lack of money will deprive them of the basic needs of food and shelter, which will decrease their survival rate. Lastly, they believe that children are the most efficient workers and that they should contribute to the welfare of their family. A few perspectives of people who do not support child labor include children should be educated so that they have a future out of poverty. A young child is not fit for this kind of work and it will affect their growth. Many children work 16-hour days under atrocious conditions. Also, working is very bad for the health of children. It can affect their breathing, and families would not send their children to work if they did not have to. If wages were better, children could have a childhood. This topic relates to current events happening today because the root cause of child labor is extreme poverty, which forces the parent to employ their children for some extra money for daily living. Most child workers can be found in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America, but child labor today is not restricted to developing countries. Many kids in this very high school get overworked. Child labor laws in Washington allow kids to work 3 hours per day and 8 hours on weekends. Many companies do not follow these laws. For example, I can work up to 25 hours per week and work 4 to 6 hours per day. On the other hand, my friend Taylor has a whole different story.
Hi Taylor.
Hi, Jazzy.
Please explain to me where you work and how much hours you work per day and week.
Well, I'm not currently working at Taco Time anymore, but when I did work there were some days after school where I was working up to 7 hours after school, and my highest hourly week was 38 hours, which is 2 hours away from being full-time. So I was working almost full-time while also still going to school full-time, which is 30 hours a week for school and about 40 hours a week for work. That was very stressful.
Did your job ever affect how you would perform in school or ever take a toll on your mental health at all?
Yes, I believe it did. There were multiple times where I was really stressed out about work that I hadn't had done yet for school, or I was just so exhausted that I didn't even want to go to school because I was so tired from working late the night before that I couldn't get up in the morning.